Yeah, thanks everyone. Yeah, my name's Phil Leggetter. In the past, I've worked at companies like Pusher and Ably, who are kind of WebSocket platforms, but plenty of webhooks to support integrating from the server side. I've worked at Nexmo, acquired by Vonage. Lots of webhooks there for SMS and message, like WhatsApp messages for, again, supporting integrations, controlling voice flows. I've worked at a company called PostHog, a kind of an up-and-coming product analytics company. This is flashing a lot, which is quite distracting. Is that okay? Yeah, okay. And at the minute, I work for a company called Hookdeck. We build platforms and tools to help engineering teams build reliable and scalable event-driven applications. We also ingest billions of events and deliver billions of webhooks every month. So hopefully that puts me in a good position for this talk. So if I were to kind of tweak the title a little bit, I would say it should be what are event destinations, why it's time to move beyond webhooks, certainly at scale. And the TLDR is that webhooks work ultimately until they don't, when event volumes grow and HTTP delivery starts to show cracks. So leading platforms like Stripe, Shopify, and Twilio support delivery mechanisms to durable queues and event buses, and we call this model event destinations. And this talk will explore why that matters, what the model looked like, and how to adopt it. So a very brief history of webhooks. Well, actually, before I start, who's building an API platform that emits webhooks? So only a couple. Who ingests webhooks from other platforms? 5. Okay. Well, you'll learn a bit about webhooks, and even more so going forward. So in 2017, someone called Jeff Lindsay wrote a blog post called "Webhooks to Revolutionize the Web," and he talked about this concept of real-time communication, supporting server-side integration between web applications, and he was frustrated by the limits of polling to get the updated resource. And he proposed that a user could register an HTTP endpoint, and whenever a new piece of data was available, an event was emitted, an HTTP post request would be made to that endpoint delivering that data. If you work with EDAs, you know there's different mechanisms there as well, but I won't go into that. So now webhooks, even though not everyone in the room seems to be working with them, are everywhere with public API platforms. So I mentioned a few. There's GitHub, there's Shopify, there's Stripe, there's Twilio, there's Nexmo, there's PostHog, there's Pusher. They are literally everywhere and used a lot for integrating with API platforms. But there are challenges. There are challenges from both the producer side, so you're emitting events, and also the consumer side. So looking at the producer challenges, as your platform grows, those number of webhook consumers explodes, and each new consumer adds pressure to your system. So there's HTTP connections that are established, and API platforms end up spending significant time managing those resources for that outbound traffic, throttling requests and scaling infrastructure to keep up. HTTP can be fragile. It's amazing. It's not going anywhere, but it can be fragile. Consumers can be down. They can time out very quickly. They can time out and take a lot longer to respond than as an API platform you want. So you're holding connections open. So to reliably deliver these events is much more effort than you would think. So you've got to handle multiple retries, exponential backoffs, dead letter queues for managing failure, and the platform that increases complexity of what you're building to ultimately deliver that single event. And you obviously need this in place, otherwise you're going to get duplication or loss. So you need observability around that. Your internal teams need to understand what's happening with this delivery of events, and your customers also need tooling to understand what's happened with the events they're expecting. They've got to manage those retries, inspect payloads, deal with alerts for failures so they understand what's happening. And ultimately, none of that is often billable. One of our investors, Patrick Malatek, was head of product at Twilio and would have loved to invest a lot more in the webhook infrastructure, webhook tooling, but could never justify it because ultimately you bill on the SMS that's sent, not the webhook delivery and getting that event. Obviously, there are problems. Customer support loads increase, and something that can definitely happen, certainly Black Friday, Cyber Monday's coming up, a lot of webhook providers may well denial of service attack their own customers because something great's happening for the customer. That results in a lot of events that ultimately brings down their own customers' infrastructure. This is a bit of an aside, but if anybody here, there are a few people that are delivering webhooks. If you're doing this at scale, I'd love to speak to you. I'm doing a small series. It's difficult to find people that are dealing with this. But I've spoken to someone called Michael Woodward, who works at Paddle, that are a merchant of record. They do the APIs for billing, checkout workflows, and subscriptions, and all sorts of other things. And he talked about the infrastructure they've had to build to reliably deliver webhooks. So I'd love to raise awareness of this and get your stories if you have one. There's a link there if you'd like to watch that. It's about an hour, so you can go through it quickly or get AI to transcribe it. So from the consumer's perspective, a developer that's working with webhooks, what do they need? What are the challenges do they have? So their systems have to be online, obviously. They have to be performant. If they're not, events can be lost or delayed. The ingestion best practices for webhooks, documented on many a place, is that you should quickly ingest, verify the payload, and push it onto a queue to process asynchronously. We talked about security a lot, I know in the context of MCP, but security a lot, obviously, in an API-focused event. Webhooks are opt-in, so your customers don't need to verify that that webhook came from you. Obviously, a big security flaw there. It's all over the place as well. We've implemented over 30 ways of signing webhooks, and there's more requests every month for that. Once they've ingested it, verified it, pushed it onto a queue, there's processing logic you need to think about. So developers got to have retry-safe, idempotent handlers. Can't be any side effects. Missing this can lead to duplicate records or broken workflows. Then there's debugging and observability. So there's their own system, what's happened to that event that I've ingested, where did I get in processing through that workflow. Also, what happened on the sender side. So your customers end up building tooling that both inspects what's happening on the platform that sent the event, but also in their own systems and bring that together. And then the development workflow and testing of webhooks is notoriously not as good as it should be. There's things like ngrok to let you receive events locally. We've got something called the Hookdeck CLI that does the same thing, specifically built for webhooks and lets you create environments that match across development, staging, production, and so on. But it's slow, but we are iterating and improving the tooling there. So again, a slight brief aside, but it is relevant to think about event-driven architectures, because when we think about EDAs, we often think about deploying services. Do people say service-oriented architectures anymore? Probably not. To things like Azure, AWS, GCP, but these are often internal systems. But why don't we think about those external services? We integrate with Stripe, we integrate with Twilio for communications. Why do we not think of those as part of our event-driven architecture? And why haven't we given the tooling and the components and the tooling as much time and effort and love to support your broader EDA as we have those internal EDAs that we're doing? Why can we not use the same components? Why can we not use the same developer tools when we're working with an EDA that encompasses these external services? So how are leading platforms rethinking this? I've already touched on it at the TLDR at the start. But at Twilio, you can, when you subscribe to an event, you can ask for the event to be delivered to Kinesis, highly scalable, durable, component within an architecture. Webhook endpoint, Segment, which is their own product. Email, probably not highly scalable for event delivery, but useful for kind of if you're fine-graining event subscription. Shopify, they actually recommend that you use GCP PubSub by default. They also support delivering events to EventBridge, and there's HTTPS endpoints for traditional webhooks. They actually call this webhooks, whereas it's really events in general, and then there's a different destination type. And finally, the Stripe, who came up with this idea of event destinations, or certainly the terminology, you can deliver events to EventBridge or webhook endpoints. So one of the reasons I'm here, as I said, the tweaked title, is that this idea of event destinations represents a modern approach for delivering events. It's one that's already adopted by these leading platforms, Stripe, Shopify, and Twilio. And instead of having tightly coupled ways of just delivering to HTTP endpoints, instead you can emit an event and deliver them to a variety of infrastructure-aware, highly durable and scalable queues and event buses that also offer a better experience for developers. So Let's talk about the benefits of event destinations for API platforms. As your platform scales, so does the complexity of delivering webhooks, as I've covered. You're handling those retries, buffering, timeouts, dead letter queues, observability, all yourself. Event destinations shift this, so instead of you will need some of this infrastructure in place, but you're delivering to more durable queues that are more likely to reliably ingest and then offer a lot of this functionality downstream. You're pushing it down to the consumer. Those things like Event Bridge, GCP PubSub, Kinesis, yes, I mean Hookdeck, that's one of the things we do for our customers. We reliably ingest and deliver events and offer additional functionality like transformations, filters, routing, and so on. And the high throughput ingestion comes with all this built-in retry handling, buffering, and failure recovery. And unlike webhooks, signature verification is often required. You can't even deliver that event. Sorry, you can't even deliver the event unless it's authenticated. So there's that guarantee, there's that improvement of security as well. All this means fewer open connections, fewer retries to manage, less custom infrastructure to manage this and maintain it, and less support overhead. You're moving people away from webhooks onto delivering these events to durable queues. This is just an idea of kind of before and after. You'll just have one of these. Your customers no longer having to manage all of this. So for developers consuming platform events, this model is a real choice on how they integrate, whether they use traditional webhooks if they want to, or plug events directly into queues or streaming platforms. They benefit from more observability, better experience, and reduced risk of missed events and duplication. They also get to use the tooling, the components and the tooling they're probably already using within their internal architecture. RabbitMQ, GCP PubSub, so that they're already getting to use all of that functionality and the tooling. So the model isn't hypothetical. It's already in production at companies that I've highlighted, Shopify, Stripe, Twilio. And these platforms introduce the ability to send events to these to webhooks, but also to these robust services. And the Event Destinations Initiative was created to document and share the best practices there that were emerging. It's a collaborative effort. It's all open source. And the idea is to help API platforms modernize their event delivery experience, because you spend a lot of time thinking about the request response APIs that we're building, and a lot less about delivering and emitting events in the experience and tools that come with that. And it benefits both the producers and consumers. So eventdestinations.org, and there's a GitHub URL as well there. So that repo contains some guidelines, and the guidelines have both required and recommended. Would love your feedback if you're interested in this, to say what should be in there, what shouldn't be in there, should it be required, should it be recommended. But I'll briefly go over these. So the recommendation is that the required is at least 2 event destination types. So webhooks is one, and then delivery to a durable queue as another. If you're still offering webhooks, you're going to need retry functionality. Even with a durable queue, I mean, GCP, AWS, and Cloudflare are all down a few months, like a month or two ago, at the same time. So even with durable queues, you're still going to have internet problems. So you need this kind of retry and exponential backoff functionality. Because event destinations should be part of your customer's EDA, they should be able to orchestrate and deploy and manage these resources as the same way they should their internal infrastructure. So you need APIs to manage those external resources, how they're going to send events to you. Or the other way around, how you're going to send events to them. And obviously alerts for failure. And the recommended items are at least one event delivery. I would say that's probably required. The ability to subscribe based on some sort of event type, topic, which is pretty common in PubSub platforms. We don't want to deny the service attack. Customers are already having problems, so if you detect failures within the platform, you should pause that subscription. There should be UI to configure and manage and inspect events, which is pretty common in any platform that offers webhooks or the ability to emit events. The ability to retry, so there's a failure state, you want to be able to retry and resend those events to recover, but also doing that by the API for automation, but also for development, clicking a button to resend is really useful. And something that Shopify offer is the ability to, when you subscribe to an event, you can actually not just say the type, the product updated, but you can also specify payload filtering that you're interested in. So, subtotal greater than 0, for example. So eventdestinations.org. So when should you consider event destinations? if you're facing challenges of scaling webhook event delivery, obviously. And customers are expecting more reliable delivery. I mean, this has obviously inspired Stripe, Shopify, Twilio to offer the ability to deliver to these different types of destinations. If you're spending significant engineering time maintaining delivery pipelines, retries, support tools, your customer support's having problems with this, it's time to consider this model. Another one is if your customers ask for it. That's obviously a good one. So before we wrap up, I'll quickly highlight an open source project. It brings this idea of event destinations to life, and we've called it Outpost. I'd love to hear what you think about the name. It's the first open source implementation of event destinations. We support 7 different destination types: SQS, S3, Hookdeck, yes, RabbitMQ, GCP PubSub. 2 of the main ones that aren't there at the moment are Kafka and EventBridge, but they are coming. It adheres to all the required guidelines and 5 out of 6 of the recommended guidelines. So if you practically think about modernizing your event delivery, Outpost might be a good way to start. Obviously, it's open source. You can look at how it's done, the architecture, if you're thinking about implementing it yourself. So event destinations aren't just a reaction to webhook pain. They're also a step forward in future-proofing API platforms. As APIs evolve, we also need to think about how we evolve our event delivery, both mechanisms and also the experiences they provide. We've seen that clear shift. I've mentioned Twilio, Shopify, Stripe a number of times. They're doing this to provide more control, better observability, more reliability, allow developers to use the tools they're already using on these pieces of infrastructure that are ultimately messaging components in their infrastructure. And by adopting the event destinations model and hopefully contributing to the open source guidelines, we can collectively improve the event delivery experience for everyone involved. It's now our opportunity to learn from the likes of platforms that we refer to often, like Stripe, Twilio, maybe Shopify, and build on those foundations together. So if you're building or involved in an API platform, please have a look at event destinations, provide your feedback, and maybe we can help build and improve API event delivery from both the producer and the consumer side together via that open source project. Please connect. I'd love to continue the conversation. I'll also be around at the end if there are any questions. Thank you.